Okay, are we live? All right, we are live. So, hello, good evening. My name is Megan, and we are going to be talking about Rhythm of War tonight. So, I personally have just started reading the Stormlight Archives, and I've kind of become obsessed with it. So, I just wanted to gush and talk about just all the stuff and all the feels after reading this book. But before we go ahead and jump into it, if you guys want to go ahead and introduce yourselves and your channel name, I'll go last. So Pete, why don't you start us out, and why don't you tell us like your Sanderson origin story, how you found out about Sanderson and that kind of thing.
So I actually found out about, so I'm Pete Wagger. I run a channel called Ponderings of Pete, but it's just my name is the channel name on YouTube. I got into Sanderson probably around 2 years ago is when I first read Mistborn. I got it suggested from a friend. And then I picked up Stormlight through while I was actually studying for this big test after I got out of college, the CPA, because I'm an accountant. So that kind of tided me over while I was doing the CPA, which was really nice. And then I kind of just went from there and theorized everything.
I'm Bookborn. My channel is Bookborn. Very easy to remember. I got into Sanderson, I think it was 7 years ago now, while I was in grad school. So very similar, Pete. I was in grad school, and our really good college friend just was like, "You've read Wheel of Time, like you need to actually read Sanderson." And he gave it to my husband first, who read it and was like, "You got to read this." And so I did Mistborn first and fell in love with it, and just history ever since. You know, everything Sanderson writes, I have to read.
Okay, so I got into Sanderson honestly just by walking into the bookstore. So I was reading like Wheel of Time and Terry Goodkind at the time, and I just walked into the store and saw Mistborn and picked it up, and it sat on my shelf for like years and years until I finally decided to pick it up one day. So I've read the original trilogy, and then this year is when I've really gotten into the Stormlight Archives, and I read Warbreaker, and then all the way up through Rhythm of War. So. All right, so I'm just checking on some technical stuff real quick, guys. Bear with me, I'm sorry. I think we're good. Okay. All right, so let's just jump right into it. So let's start off with the prologue, because I feel like with every new installment, we get a new kind of POV and new information about the prologue. So what were your guys' takes on seeing from Navani's point of view and kind of seeing what we learned about Gavilar?
This was personally the most interesting one to me, because I felt like it gave us the most new information. I felt almost betrayed when we found out that Gavilar wasn't that great, and I really enjoyed how it was like, oh, a kind of meta thing that Navani was the reason that people regard Gavilar, and so the same reason we've been regarding Gavilar this whole time. And so I thought that was kind of like a cool connection, like, oh, to see behind the curtain. And I just really grew to love Navani in this book so much. She got a lot of screen time, and I really like her as a character.
What about you, Pete? What you think?
I really like this one. I kind of like how Sanderson can evolve. Like we have character development for a dead character. So like the very first book with the prologue, we're like, oh, this guy's a decent dude. He's trying to set his brother on the right path. And then like as we progress, we realize, oh, this guy's actually a really cruddy dude, really only focused on conquering. And then in this one, we really see like, oh, he's really only thinking about himself and his legacy throughout all of this.
Yeah, he definitely seemed like he had some self-motivating issues. What about the spheres? What do you guys think he's dabbling in?
Well, I thought it was interesting because it seems like that Gavilar found anti-light before Navani did.
Yeah, he definitely had some self-motivating issues.
And that's just kind of like very interesting where that's coming from. So is Braze where you can get more anti-light? It's kind of figuring out where that came from. I'm very interested in. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like super interested to see further exploration on that. So I completely agree. So when I heard that Sanderson was writing this novel, everyone was like, oh, this is going to be Navani's book. Do you guys agree that this was like her story?
For certain.
Yeah.
Yeah. I personally thought that it had a lot to do with Venli. Like, I was just really surprised with how much page time was given to Venli. Like, I kind of...
Well, it's technically Venli's book, right? Because it's her flashback. So if we say everybody's book is their flashback book, then it is Venli's book. But I think it's the most we're going to see of Navani. That's my personal opinion, because I don't think she gets a book.
I was not expecting to learn that much about Venli. So that was pretty cool. Especially like, you know, her backstory with her mom, and then how she was just so motivated to, you know, do what she did and kind of make something of herself, especially because she was always underneath her sister's shadow. So when everyone said it was Navani's book, I was like, I don't know, I'm learning more about Venli than Navani.
Yeah, I actually didn't hear anyone say it was Navani's book. I think we all knew it was either going to be Ashonai or Venli as the flashback on this one. So I was surprised, at least. I guess I hadn't heard that people thought that.
But did you hear that?
I think it would have. I think it would have made sense to a certain point to make it Navani's like flashbacks, but at the same time, that would have destroyed Brandon's symmetry with everything because we're getting one book for each order, and we've already had a Bondsmith book, and making it her flashbacks would have been a spoiler if it was the Bondsmith book.
Yeah. I loved her character arc in this story. You know, I just thought that the fact that she wanted to be a scholar and kind of thought of herself as a scholar to an extent, or at least supporting scholars and not being a scholar herself, and kind of like dealing with, you know, that conflict throughout her adulthood, and the fact that she kind of was able to solidify her identity as a scholar in this book was really, really cool. I personally enjoyed that quite a bit. So
yeah, Sanderson did a good job of writing about the what's the term that's used, like the imposter syndrome. That is really what Navani was going through, was imposter syndrome, and I think it's extremely relatable, particularly as a woman. I think maybe for anybody in their 30s, like you just feel like I did all this stuff, and am I really good at it? Can I really do anything? I think it's just such a common emotion.
Did you guys expect the ending with her and the sibling?
No.
I thought predicted that.
What?
Like a year or two ago. I predicted it like a year or two ago that Navani was going to be gone the sibling.
That's nice. It would be that long? Or you thought a year or two ago? Is that what you said?
Not exactly a year or two ago. I haven't been reading that long, actually. But like soon after Oathbringer, I started looking into the sibling, and I was kind of like, I think Navani's going to bond it. Huh. The odd thing with this book is I went into it like, oh, Navani's going to bond the sibling. And then Sanderson was like, no, R'lain's going to bond the sibling. And I was like, oh, wow, this is a better solution. And then Navani bonds the sibling. And I was kind of, there was some things with that I was like, I wish they could have resolved the whole like, oh my gosh, you're torturing Spren. Because I don't feel like they did that.
Mm-hmm. Dude, I'm so with you, Pete. Like, I was so for R'lain bonding the sibling. Like, I was so stoked. Like, he thinks he's rejected, and now he gets like the most important Spren. I was so excited. So I was actually a little let down.
Yeah.
But then I was like, I've been on board now. I got on board with Navani.
Yeah, I didn't expect that just because of how the sibling was treating her. Like, she was just so angry and like, I don't trust humans, and you're you know, hurting them by putting them inside of gem hearts. And I just wasn't expecting her to finally bond with Navani just because of it took so long, and they were constantly back and forth throughout the whole book. So yeah, I thought that was a great ending, and I wasn't expecting it because Dalinar is a bondsmith, and I'm like, would they really make his wife a bondsmith? But then Dalinar is also having trouble with his powers and kind of like learning. So I'm like, well, maybe the fact that Navani is also the same order as him, they might be able to work together to strengthen him. I don't know what you guys think about that.
100%. Navani's going to figure everything out like that.
Yeah,
She's gonna figure out. Although I think, aren't all the bondsmiths different though? I think they can all do different things. So anyway, I don't know. I'm waiting for someone to bond the Night Watcher.
Yeah. Adolin 2023.
Oh,
no, Adolin can't. Wait, this is a good question. Megan, how do you feel about Adolin turning radiant?
I don't know. I just feel like he's so good that it's almost like he would be like the perfect character for Sanderson to have something tragic happen to him, because he is so good and people love him so much that if he were to, I don't know, maybe start serving Odium or become Odium's champion, I just feel like that would tear some people up. And I feel like, you know, Sanderson would really like kind of shock some people. So I just don't see him being a Radiant just because that's just the right thing to do. Like, I think it would be better if he went some other direction. I don't know.
I don't want him to be a Radiant either. I would really love to see a non-Radiant connection with him and Maya. I'm just like so invested in their relationship, and I don't necessarily want it to turn Radiant for whatever reason.
Yeah, I think there's more to the Deadeyes than we've learned. I think that there's some more background there.
Yeah, Sanderson talked a little bit on his live last night. I don't know if either of you guys caught it. It has to do with Elantris and what happened there. And
not right now.
What?
I'm reading that.
Oh, okay. I mean, not really spoilers, but it has, apparently, he just said to look at Elantris, and he said that has to do with the Unmade. We know that. Like, I think it's with the Unmade being trapped. Something about that. Yeah. So there's a lot of people theorizing right now. We don't really know why, but we know that it was voluntary. That was super interesting to me. So
yeah.
So we know that the Spren becoming Deadeyes, the oaths being broken was voluntary. I don't think Boado Mishram going into the gemstone was voluntary. And I'm also interested in seeing, like, okay, was it one section of Radiance shoving Boado into the gemstone and another section being like, no! And then once they realized what they did, because they literally ripped Boado's connection from everything. Because you have the sibling feeling it's...
Yeah, and I wonder, though, I just don't know if Maya would have defended Adolin so much if she hadn't known she'd be a Deadeye. That's why I'm just like, I don't know. Because she was very adamant, like, we chose to do this.
True.
And so I felt like they must have known, because I feel like if I chose to just break my bond and it's like, whatever, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But choosing to become a Deadeye is a deal.
Yeah.
I think they knew something would happen to them. Sanderson has gone on record saying they didn't know they would become Deadeyes because that was the first time that it ever happened. So
maybe they agreed to them trapping the Unmade, not realizing that's what would happen. So maybe that's what Maya means.
Yeah.
Like, they knew something bad would happen, but they didn't know what. I don't know. I'm very interested in that.
I knew from Oathbringer that she was going to come through. Like, I just knew it. Their relationship was just, growing too much, and she was going to shock us all. Did you guys find the whole trial hearing thing interesting?
Oh, yeah.
I wanted more.
I wanted more, too. I thought it wrapped up way too quickly. Like, the Honor Spren are jerks. I'm sorry. Like, they made me mad, and I just, kind of getting frustrated with them, and also just being in Lasting Integrity and kind of seeing that side, being in Shadesmar, and, just how they viewed everything that had happened between the humans and the Spren and all of that. I wanted more too, definitely.
I thought that it should have been a little bit in part 2. I was frustrated by the lack of their story in part 2. I felt like it was such an interesting thread, and I think the book just couldn't be longer. I think the tour was like, no. Or else I think we maybe would have gotten more.
We'll probably
there's a few parts that you cut out.
we'll get like a middle book, like it'll be, between book 4 and 5. It'll take place in Shadesmar.
Give us
Yeah, it'll be an extra thing.
So yeah, I totally agree. So I wish there had definitely been more page time with Adolin and Shallan. I personally like Shallan. I know that a lot of people find her aggravating. I don't know, but I personally like her. It took a while to get on board with like the 3 different personalities within her, and like I understand that she's trying to cope with the bad things that she's done and kind of figure herself out. But what were you guys' thoughts on Formless and how that played out in the book?
I wanted more. I just needed more of Shallan's story. It was resolved too quickly, and that was my biggest gripe.
Yeah.
I feel like her story could have been spread out more between Oathbringer and this Rhythm of War. Like if he had done a little bit more research into DID and really delved into that before Oathbringer, that would have been really cool. I think Formless was mentioned maybe once at the very end of Oathbringer, and I feel if he had like built that up from like halfway through Oathbringer, I think the ending would have been a lot more satisfying.
Yeah, we just needed more time between it, I think.
Yeah. I seriously thought that it was another personality that was going to take over Shallan. I know a lot of people said, oh no, we knew it was Shallan the whole time. I'm like, well, I didn't. And I was just thinking, because Formless just sounds so sinister, I'm like, she's going to serve Odium. Like I had this whole theory played out, and then like it wrapped up in like 2 pages. Oh no, it's just Shallan. So I was kind of disappointed with that. But I still like the whole concept of her having to create identities to deal with her memories and stuff like that, which we learned a lot about her backstory, and I was a bit surprised about that. So how did you guys feel about
I called it. The minute we went to Shadesmar, he was like, oh, Spren got dead-eyed 10 years ago, a cryptic Spren. I was like, oh my gosh, Shallan killed a Spren. I just knew it immediately, and I was like so proud of myself. Finally, I figured something out, because I usually never do. So that's super interesting though, like trying to figure out when she's been using Testament and when she's been using Pattern. I think that was one of the coolest reveals.
And like, the fact that she just didn't remember, and also the fact that the Honor Spren were complaining how humans were killing Spren, and then it's like, oh, Shallan killed a Spren. So it was kind of ironic.
Yeah, I'm very interested about why Pattern would want to bond someone who killed a Spren, and how it's going to work for her have bonded to Spren. Like that is super interesting. I don't know if you know anything about that, Pete. I feel like you've read more into that kind of stuff than I have.
I think the only thing Brandon's really said has to do like with the live stream yesterday, with how Shallan's timeline is really weird because she's like rediscovering oaths she already swore. So
do you think, someone was commenting on my video today, do you think the I'm afraid and I killed my father are old oaths or new oaths?
I think the I'm afraid is an old oath at the very least.
Right? I killed my father. What a kid would say. And we knew that she was very young with Testament because she's not old now.
I think I killed my father is probably one of the oaths because she had to progress enough to have a shard blade, which I think is still the 3rd for them.
Well, but the problem is that she kills her mom before she kills her dad, and she kills her mom with the shard blade.
True.
Bizarre.
I know.
I'm
very into that story. I'm super curious about how that's going to work out.
Yeah, I think he's going to do what he's been doing and kind of unveil things slowly with her backstory, because even though she's getting her memories back, like she didn't get all of them back, she just got some of them back. So I think it's one of those things where little by little we're going to learn.
I just want to know what has to happen to you as a little kid to have 2 or 3 oaths sworn by the time you're 10 years old.
Yeah.
She doesn't even remember doing it, which is sad.
I know.
So let's keep going with Shallan, since we kind of ended up on her. How did you guys feel about Pattern talking with the Ghostbloods?
But he wasn't, though. That's the thing.
The whole like
he was being eavesdropped on.
Yeah, the whole.
I felt like that was
line.
I was actually kind of frustrated with the ending to that, because I think it would have been more interesting if Pattern was an actual spy for the Ghost Bloods.
Mm-hmm.
No,
that would
you're
just
wrong.
hate so many things.
Yes,
you can't trust Pattern. Who can you trust? That was no.
That's the point.
No.
It's so painful.
Like when I think of a friend like being bonded to someone, I'm like, it's almost like a part of their soul. Like they can't do that. So I agree, Pete. That would have been like just so many implications.
Yeah, I couldn't handle it.
Oh my gosh, I know. So
I was convinced it was Beryl.
Yes, me too.
So Shalon and the Ghost Bloods. What's going on with that? How do you guys feel about her terminating her relationship with them? Any thoughts?
I thought it was really cool. I'm excited to see Lightweavers versus Ghost Bloods, probably in the back 5 more than anything. Because I think we're going to get major world hopping in the back 5, which is going to be great.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to get world hopping next book. I'd be really surprised if we didn't.
I feel like this book had the most connections out of all of them because they're
by far.
I think it was Raboniel was talking to Navani about all these different worlds, and Navani's like, "Oh, different worlds. Like it's a normal thing." So I just feel like there was a lot of setup for expanding on that in this book.
And every Cosmere world was mentioned in this book in some form or another. So yeah, it just seems significant. I think my biggest thing about Ghost Bloods is knowing that Kelsier is the head of them has changed my view of the Ghost Bloods a lot.
So did you guys catch that at first? Because I didn't catch that.
Kelsier's one of my favorite Cosmere characters. So if there's a scar, it's like Kelsier.
Yeah. I was like, so I didn't catch it. And then, I was like, when I was taking my notes and kind of like, I was watching people's reviews, and then I was like, wait, what? No, it blew my mind. So, and then I kind of like backtracked and looked at all the clues, and I was like, I can't believe I missed that.
The thing is, you always miss something because there's so much. So it's just like you miss something. I missed really obvious stuff that was even more obvious than that connection, just because it's like there's so much information. You can only hold so much of it.
Well, at one point, Wit says something about him, and that had to do with their interaction in the Mistborn trilogy, and I completely missed that. So there were definitely very small, subtle clues. But I mean, how do you feel about Kelsier being involved with the Ghost Bloods? What do you think that's going to look like for the future, in the future books? Do you have any theories?
Kelsier is going to be a villain, and I'm sad about it. That's my theory.
We knew that was coming, though. Brandon's been trolling us for years.
I know. Because when you read Mistborn, you're like, he's not that great. He's great, but he's not. And it's just, I know, but.
Yeah, anyway. He was kind of like a product of his circumstance and was doing what he was doing because it had to be done. But I feel the fact that he was, spoilers for Mistborn, killed off in first book was way too soon for the type of character that he was. And I'm like, he has to have some sort of important role later on because.
Now, Megan, have you read Secret History?
No, I'm getting it for Christmas.
That's one of my very favorites. If you like Kelsier, Secret History will Anyway, I don't want to give anything away then, so I will not say anymore.
So I'm interested to see where that goes, and just especially because the Ghost Bloods are involved in just all different parts of the Cosmere, and just how it's all going to come together. I'm super excited.
You know what, Megan? I'm not surprised you didn't catch that Kelsier was Ghost Bloods if you haven't read Secret History.
Yeah.
I feel like if you hadn't read that, then you wouldn't have known he was alive. So why would you be looking for Kelsier?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you for making me feel better.
Yeah, I think once you read Secret History, I don't know, Pete, if you agree with this, that's when you kind of think, okay, Kelsier is probably going to be a very important player in the Cosmere and maybe a villain. I feel like that's the setup is there, not necessarily in the first Mistborn. I don't know.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that blew my mind when I first read Secret History. I was like, wait.
I read it in a sitting. It was so good. I need to go back and read that one. It's good. Megan.
Yeah.
Gotta get to
Sixth
it.
of Dusk, though.
I've literally read like a Sanderson book, I feel like every month this year.
Oh no, you need to take a break. I get it.
No, I'm in the middle of Elantris, and I have Alloy of Law planned for January. So
Oh, gosh, you haven't read the second Miss. See, so all the Kelsier stuff, it's no surprise you missed it. Yeah, you shouldn't feel bad about that. Anyway.
Okay, sorry, I'm just like looking at my notes, trying to figure out like where I am. All
So,
right. Yeah.
really going back to Adolin, because I really want to talk about the Adolin champion theory.
Okay.
Just because I love Adolin, and I think so. Before this book, I understood the whole hey, Adolin's going to be becoming the champion of Odia, and it might still be possible, but I think it's very unlikely now because I think in order for Adolin to break and not only turn against his father, but turn against the entire human race, something has to happen to Shallan. So that's what I was looking for with Rhythm of War was like, okay, how bad is Shallan going to get? Because the worse Shallan gets, the more likely Adolin's going to turn. Because that would be a catalyst for him. Because that's like, yeah.
I was going to say, like, I just have a really hard time seeing that with Adolin. Sorry, I say Adolin. I'm going to try to say it the right way. Adolin, people are like, well, he's getting mad at his dad. And I'm like, he found out his dad killed his mom. Like, I think it's a very normal reaction. It isn't some, like, deep resentment. Like, I think it's a pretty average feeling. And so I have, and especially with what Sanderson said last night about the tone of his book being so dark and, like, he had to lighten up Rhythm of War because people were so depressed about it in a pandemic year. I feel like Adolin is the one kind of character he has that allows his narrative to be brightened in a very heavy narrative. So I have a hard time feeling that Brandon is going to let go of that kind of narrative, like just narratively, like outside of the Cosmere, just like from a author point. I feel like he might just need Adolin as that person that can kind of bring levity to things. So,
well, that's exactly why he would turn him bad.
Yeah, maybe. I'm an optimist.
I just feel like he's so mad at Dalinar, and just that whole scene where they're standing in front of the Oath Gate, and Adolin's like, I've never, what you want me to be, and I'm trying to be myself, and like I feel there was just so much internal conflict within him that I feel like he's gonna get frustrated and do something reckless. I don't know. That's just my feeling.
It's possible, but I think it's not just about turning him against Dalinar. It's like against turning him against everybody. Mm-hmm. Because Adolin is basically an edge dancer because he remembers everybody. In order for him to be the champion, he'd have to want to destroy everybody else, including all of his friends.
And I think we forget about Renarin. Like, I think Renarin is someone who's been forgotten and lost by his father for so many years that he would be someone who could also pull Adolin from the brink. So I just have a hard time feeling like there's not enough of a support system. And like Shallan is so screwed up. So I feel like she could be like, no, Adolin, it's okay, So I just have a hard time understanding how we'd get to that point fast enough for him to be Odium's champion.
Especially in 10 days.
In 10 days.
10 days.
Speaking of Renarin, I was kind of upset that he didn't have as much page time in this book. Because I think he's a super interesting character, and I'm kind of looking to see like more from him, with his friend and everything. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
Book 7. That's his flashback book.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we found out something, I think, cool about him on the live last night. Are we going to give that up, or should we not, since Sanderson didn't want to give it up?
We can wait. Well, they'll find out eventually.
They'll find out about it. Okay, we'll wait.
It's obvious.
I mean, if he talked about it.
He talked about it obtusely, and then everybody in the chat guessed it, essentially.
Okay. So he gave enough clues. Man, I feel like I missed out.
You'll figure it out. It's interesting. He's long promised what he what he indicated with this. It is long promised, and I'm not surprised at all.
I'm so surprised.
It didn't surprise me either, Pete. I feel like it was very obvious, especially for me for R'laine. I felt like the clues about R'laine have been coming for a long time. Anyway.
And it makes more sense why R'laine's in the Truth Watchers too.
So let's move on to Kaladin, because I feel like Kaladin had an interesting kind of story in this book. So how did you guys take it when Dalinar kind of honorably discharged Kaladin from the ranks? I think it was the right move, but I know like a lot of people were like, it made me so upset. I'm like, but it needed to be done, I think.
Yeah, I think it probably upset a lot of people because it's enjoyable to read Kaladin going on a field and destroying. And or not even just destroying, saving. It's like, it's very satisfying as a reader. Like, that's one of the things that makes Way of Kings so satisfying, is seeing him like buoy up Bridge 4. And I think taking that part of Kaladin's identity almost feels like you're taking part of the heart of the book, which is why I personally liked it so much. Like, yes, we're having to make him sit in this, but I can see why some readers might have been upset because they didn't get like the moments they wanted Kaladin to have, which I think is such a weird meta narrative, because when people have depression, people always want things from you that you can't give. Just like, I don't have depression, but I have very close friends who do. And so it was like this perfect narrative of like, Kaladin isn't even giving the readers what they want because of his depression. I just thought it was like such a cool meta narrative there.
That's a really good insight. I didn't notice that.
Yeah. I mean, it's really a way for you kind of have to step back and make a character not be the Superman kind of character all the time too. Because I feel like Kaladin at points is kind of like a Superman character. He always comes in and saves the day, which by the way, he still did in this book. But I feel like it's a good way to show that he's fallible and, still struggles with things as well. So I don't know. I think it's a really good choice that he did that in this book personally. Speaking of which, what do you guys think about him saying his fourth ideal?
So great. And this is the scene that Sanderson's been waiting to write for 20 years, and I'm like, this is perfect. Thank you. So I
with his brother and everything, like it was perfect.
I got teary-eyed. I won't lie. That was the only part that I got teary-eyed at, was Tien showing up.
Same.
I didn't even cry when Teft died, which I feel like I should have, and I felt bad about that because I love Teft, but I knew Teft was going to die. I don't know if anyone else felt that way, but it was just like, I just knew it.
I honestly, for some reason, this whole book, I was like, I miss Brock. Like, I don't know what it was, but I just miss Brock. So
we're going to get to see him again, right? Because it was so sudden at the end, like, you won't see him again. And I was like, what?
We're going to get a Rock novella between... I can't remember when he said he was going to write it. I have to reread The State of Sanderson, which came out today. But
I know. I only read half of it.
We're going to get like 3 more. He's writing Skyward 3 and 4, and then Wax and Wane 4 before the next one is his goal right now. And I think the Rock novella is going to come after Skyward, or after Stormlight Archive 5. But it's going to take place in between. I could be very wrong.
That's 3 years from now.
Yes, I know.
Get a calendar, start taking off the days.
Essentially.
I think that would be really interesting to kind of, do that, just because they're really interesting people and they say that they can see, gods and they can see Spren. I think there's more to that part of the story that might play a role later on. I don't know. I always thought it was interesting, but yeah, I was like, I miss Brock and Lopin and all those guys. Like, I like them together. I think so. I found the story being in Urithiru the whole time, and kind of having it occupied. I felt like that was a very interesting setting, because other than the couple, of Shadesmar scenes, we were basically in the tower the whole entire time. And I feel like in previous books, we jumped around and gone to different places. So I found this setting-wise was the most stagnant out of all of them. Just personally, it didn't bother me at all, but it was one thing I noticed from the story, just being in the tower. So
yeah, this is going to be a really weird reference point, but it kind of reminded me of the 6th Harry Potter book. Let me explain. It was the first novel that didn't have the whole world consequences so up front. It was very individual. It was Navani versus Rabanael. I can't say her name. It was their relationship more, even though what they were doing had vast consequences, it was very narrow focused. And I always thought about that as the sixth Harry Potter book. Like all the other ones were like these big like Voldemort things. And then the sixth Harry Potter book's like Harry's dating Ginny. And it's like, that's all it's about. And that's what this felt to me. It was like, the scope was so much lower. Like you said, it was pretty like stagnant in one location. And for me, I loved it because it felt like a breath of fresh air from the other books. But I can also see why people don't like that because it is a departure. And I'm the weirdo who thinks Warbreaker is the best book. And I think it's similar to that. Like Warbreaker is kind of stagnant in the same way. And so I think it's just like a preference. Like either you like that or you don't. And I just happen to like it.
Yeah.
Without
a doubt.
Sorry, go ahead.
Without a doubt, this is my favorite Cosmere book so far. Just because there's so much stuff that's going on in this book. And I think this is also the first book that Brandon is fully writing to two audiences, kind of, because he's writing fully to a Cosmere audience and fully to a just a Stormlight Archive audience. And he was trying to balance that in this book. And I think he definitely did better than Oathbringer, because Oathbringer was almost a full Cosmere as an audience, but not quite. But I think he's working on balancing that, and the next book will be interesting to see how he does that.
Yeah, I struggled with Oathbringer a little bit. I felt that it was dragging, and then the ending was like. So this one, though, I felt like kept me engaged the whole time because there were just small reveals and just interesting things going on in the world. So I agree with you there.
Yeah, I think this book had the most balanced viewpoints in terms of interest. Like in the past books, there's usually been one storyline that I'm vastly more interested in. And this time I felt like because of the way it was written, they were all three equally interesting, which was nice. I wasn't rushing to get to the viewpoint I wanted most from. I was like equally happy to be in each viewpoint.
Outside of part 2, I can agree with you there, because in part 2, part 3 was the lack of Adolin and Shallan.
Oh, it was part 3. I agree with you. I was missing it.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's a good sign because I was interested in all the storylines. But yeah, I agree. Yeah. I think pacing wise, it was off there.
So how did you guys like the kind of experimentation that Navani was doing with Raboniel in the tower with all the different lights? Do you guys have any thoughts on that? It was a lot.
I loved it.
It was great. It was all sciencey and great. I heard some people call this book a sci-fi book because of all the science, and I disagree. I think it's slightly sci-fi. It's like mostly fantasy and sort of sci, so it's kind of getting into the sci fantasy territory, but it's definitely not fully sci-fi. But I think he's giving us so much more to theorize about, which is great because the next 3 years is just going to be writing on the walls like a madman in an insane asylum. It's going to be great.
Yeah, and I mean, Sanderson, I don't think it's sci-fi at all. I think people are just confusing hard versus soft and magic systems. And Sanderson has always been a hard magic system person, so it's always going to feel a little sciencey because there's rules. It's
just because there's science in it doesn't mean it's sci-fi.
yeah, exactly. I mean, like the world runs on science. Okay, like so every world has some science. Even Lord of the Rings has. You know what I mean? There's rules in Lord of the Rings. So it's just like, yeah. Anyway.
I mean, you have to base your fantasy world within elements of our world, so that readers can understand it and have some sort of context. So, I mean, that makes sense, But there's a lot of different lights going on here that I'm kind of wondering, like, how it's going to play out later on. So, like, you have the void light and the anti-void light and the anti-storm light. I'm like, whoa, what is all this stuff? So I feel like I'm gonna have to start keeping a notebook and trying.
Oh my goodness! Did you guys just get a ton of comments that we haven't been seeing this whole time?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness! I'm sorry, guys. We haven't been able to see your comments this whole time.
They all just populated.
Oh, this is sad. Hi, guys.
Let's go back. Oh my god. Wow. Okay.
I was so wondering why people weren't saying anything.
Yeah, no, I've been playing around with it the whole time. I'm like, okay, where are they? Oh my god, I'm sorry. Okay, so let's go through these. Hi. All right, so okay. You guys can see them, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you want to just address any of them.
Fantasy Talk. When was Formless called he?
I just read that.
Yeah, I don't actually remember seeing that. That's interesting.
Give me a page number. I was like, I know, I got my book right here. Give me a page number.
Let me see. David, this was probably
what. It doesn't matter. I originally thought that the friend were like the opposite sex or gender to the person they were bonded to, but then that's not it. So I don't know. Interesting. Okay. I don't know. I didn't notice that. All right.
I think it probably makes sense. Shalon has a ton of different personalities. I don't think it would be surprising if she had a personality that was not considered a she. But that's just my take on it.
Yeah. Okay, Jason says, it seems like we're talking about Shalon. She's on the fourth idea with both Testament and Pattern.
Yeah, I think I can agree.
Wow.
You guys are thinking 2 each?
I don't know.
Because she doesn't have her armor.
Well, there was technically in Oathbringer, if you remember at the end of Oathbringer, when Yasna comes up, I think it's Yasna, it's either Yasna or Dalinar comes up to her, and I think all of her Stormlight is spread, and it was Yasna. She looks at Shalon, but then Shalon and Veil disappear, and she's actually radiant in armor. So there was some... not sure.
I'm telling you, she doesn't remember everything, and those memories are gonna come back, and she's just gonna like bust out and be like a warrior or something. Interesting.
Yes, she was a child ninja warrior at 10, and she forgot.
I'm just reading through comments, guys. I'm so sorry. That was so bizarre.
Are we allowed to talk about Thadakar? We already did, of course. We're allowed to talk about Thadakar.
Tanyam928 is asking, how did Pattern know he could contact Wit with the black box? I think Pattern said that Wit told him.
He's just making.
If I remember correctly.
I think so too, because I think Wit's been very concerned about Shalon, and I'm very curious why. Like, Wit always interacts with Shalon the very most.
Yeah.
Interesting part. So he's been grooming her to be a world hopper all along.
Maybe. If you want to put a creepy spin on it,
Oh.
Who said it? Well, no. I'm saying someone said they thought that Thadakar, Yuri says Thadakar has a thing for recruiting young girls to his crews. And I was like, cool, way to make it sound super creepy. Thank you for that.
Just a couple.
Oh, speaking of the champion theory, Jason Allen says during the trial, Adolin specifically says, I will never serve odium.
I just feel like 10 days is too long to get from there to somewhere else. But
especially, like, it'll be interesting if Taravangian would conceal that he was odium to Adolin and kind of trick him. That's a possibility.
Dude, guys, Taravangian as odium, just literally terrifying.
I was like,
oh, God. So exciting.
Like, if we even talk about that, like, that'll take an hour in itself.
Oh, yeah.
But we can definitely jump on it. So, was anyone expecting anything like that?
No.
I knew it was happening right before it happened. Does that make sense? So I didn't expect it at all. But as it was happening, I was like, oh my gosh, cultivation did that thing. This is what it means. And it was like that perfect foreshadowing when you know it right as it's happening. That it was just such a good moment.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that scene was wild because you have Seth with Nightblood thinking he's killing Taravangian, and then it's actually not Taravangian's corpse, so they're gonna have no idea what happened. And I'm like, if this worked out just way too perfectly, you know, I don't even know how they're gonna figure out that he, you know, basically ascended. Like, I don't know. And I'm just wondering, like, what Cultivation's role in all of this is, because I feel like she's kind of been on the back burner, and that she definitely is like a silent player, and I can't figure her out, or like what's going on with her, or how involved she is, or she's just like a bystander. And I feel like maybe I missed something, but what's going on with her and Lift? Like, I didn't read Edgedancer yet, so I don't know what their like relationship is. I don't know if you guys can shed some light on that, but I just feel like there's going to be a whole like reveal with Cultivation.
We don't know with Lift still. Even from Edgedancer, we do not know what happened yet.
Or why, more specifically,
Why more specifically is a good point.
I think cultivation, at least with Taravangian, may have bit off more than she can chew. I also think we don't know her motivations because we don't know what happened when Honor died or was splintered.
Yes, and I was someone was commenting to me like Hoyd said at some point that cultivation has almost given up on humans or something like, I don't know when that happened, but he said that, and so you're like, maybe Honor died and now she's mad. There's a lot of complex motivations, and it's very stressful in the best way.
Yes.
I just felt like I heard her mentioned more in this book than in the past, and I'm like, she's got to have some sort of role. So now I'm super curious. So I don't know, but
I'm interested. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, going back to Taravangian, honestly, I think he's like the perfect villain because he's one of those villains that thinks that what he's doing is right and will do whatever he can because he thinks it's right rather than just being like, oh, I'm evil for evil's sake. And that's my favorite sort of villain. So I just think that he's perfect for this role. I don't know what you guys think.
No, completely. And villains who care about people and their family. Like, there's just not enough villains. Like, he cares deeply about his people, even though as outsiders we're like, what are you doing? You're doing the worst thing. But he's intelligent, he's crafty, he has his own motivations that are, like you said, very complex. And I think he's one of the most terrifying villains because of that. Like, I am terrified about the havoc he could potentially wreak across the Cosmere.
And he's, got his smart days, so like he might have another.
Well, it's a Rappa. We don't know if cultivation will still affect him now that he has a shard.
True. I think it's a no, but
I think it's a no as well.
I think his connection with Odium will overwhelm his connection with cultivation.
But if he was powerful like that before,
he's basically both all at the same time right now.
Interesting. Dalinar probably will just not have a clue what's going on. So
no, it's going to be great. Day 10 is going to be great. Also, Jason said something a little bit up about Sja-anat and
Renarin.
And Renarin. I will say we don't necessarily know what like whether I don't think Renarin will be on board. Renarin, we don't know that much about. Sja-anat could definitely, I think she could be convinced to be on board with Todium, and Todium will convince her because I think he knows enough that he's just going to be like, okay, let's give you what you want. Cultivation, he also will manipulate, and I think thus he could manipulate Renarin, maybe.
It's hard because you use the word manipulate is so great. We've already seen him manipulate so many people.
Yeah.
He's manipulated Jasna, which I know is Yasna, but I refuse. He's manipulated Jasna. He's manipulated Dalinar. He's manipulated everyone. And so I agree with you. Renarin could be a weird case, though, because of his past, but I don't know. I think he could be on board. But right now, it doesn't seem like he wants people to know that he is Odium because he doesn't want Hoyd to know, right? So that could, I don't know, that could limit things.
So yeah, Jason points out that Renarin wrote the "I'm sorry" note and brought the 2 corrupted Windspren. Are you, Jason? Are you talking about like with the Windspren that were given to Taravangian that drew Odium to him? Yeah, I think he's on board with Sja-anat, and thus he could be on board with Todium. We'll see.
Please don't use Todium. Can we all agree as a fandom that's literally the worst name anyone's ever come up with? It makes me so mad inside.
Another one is Oldium, like with an L.
We've never done that before. It's just still Odium. You're just like Odium post Rhythm of War, Odium pre Rhythm of War, right? We don't call anyone else.
I'm kind of like backtracking through these comments. I'm sorry. That was like, it was just literally like everything populated.
Oh yeah, sorry. Something to what Pete just said with what Jason said. I always assumed that the "I'm sorry" note was because he was agreeing with Seth's plan. that's what I read it as. Like, he thought that Seth was making the right choice in what he was doing. But I guess you're saying because he's a truth watcher, he knew what was going to happen.
I think because the nature of odium coming into the room, and because of like that adium versus adium kind of vibe that they get with the blackness, I don't think he could have truly figured out what was going to happen.
Yeah.
So I think I agree with you, Bookborn, that he's probably thinking about hi, you're going to kill Taravangian.
That's how I personally read it. But I mean, we won't know. I mean, it would be an interesting plot point if Renarin was like, no.
I knew.
Yeah, I knew, and I agree. That's interesting. I didn't read
that point. Renarin's probably going to be the first to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't hardly hear anything about him from this book except for like those important things. So, yeah. Sorry, I just saw Michael's comment that Wood is protecting Shallan because she's going to bring destruction of the world. So we're not trusting Shallan, huh?
I mean,
it'd be accidental.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
She kind of is a loose cannon a little bit.
Oh yeah.
So I thought that was fun.
She's the kind of character that you love because you're always like, Shallan, what are you doing? Why are you making, like, look at your life, look at your choices. Anyway.
Oh, we have a Kaladin and Syl shipper in this chat too.
We do.
At the very bottom.
No.
I don't like it, but I can see the possibilities, and I don't like it.
No.
Like, relationship?
Yeah.
How? I don't think that works like that.
I mean, they're very close. They have talked about the thing before because Syl is weird. And then, so...
Kings? They were...
that was in Oathbringer.
Was it?
And then, so this book, the possibilities, basically, in order for them to be in an actual relationship, she has to be physical. And
wow.
she's like, in the physical realm. That's what I meant. In the physical realm.
I refuse to listen to this blasphemy. They are very good friends.
We have Ishar, and then we have, she rested. She's full size now. So it's kind of like, okay.
But there's the Herald, can't remember his name. What is his name? Ishar. He's trying to bring Spren into the physical realm.
Exactly.
So
which is crazy in and of itself. Like,
I don't know. Yeah, with Ishar's experiments at the end. What is that about? I felt like that was just thrown in there. Like, we didn't hardly hear from Dalinar this whole time, and then that happened, and I was like, wait, what? I don't even know what to think about that.
End of book 5 is going to take our entire world and just flip it. And we're going to have 5 years of waiting for what's going to happen.
I'm already dreading the bomb that will be dropped at the end of book 5. It's just, we already know we're going to suffer.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
What's that quote from? Like, we're going to suffer, but we love it.
Yeah, I don't know where that's from, but.
Everyone's got to take it here. Always. Every time. I was in more seriousness. Yeah, that ending, I agree, Megan. It was really out of nowhere for me, and I'm not sure what it means, and it was very sinister. The ending was very sinister.
I mean, it was disturbing because they're not meant to function like that, and then it was almost like he's trying to do some experimentation on them to allow them to function in the physical realm, and it was just, it was weird and disturbing, and like I can't figure out what the point of it is. So
it's definitely caused by his madness, since he wants to be I can't say this correctly because I have no idea, because too many vowels together are consonants. Adonalsium.
Mm-hmm.
Like he wants to be Adonalsium reborn, essentially, because of his madness. And it's tied to that because he wants to create something, quote unquote.
You know, I wouldn't be mad if Vyre wanted to show up and stab him with that little knife there. I hate Vyre, but he could do that. I'd be okay with it.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see if they can actually, like, I think everything will just be interesting to see if Seth stabs him first. But Seth's not really that good of a swordsman anyways.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Moash.
Oh God.
I know, like, he's such a Polarizing character.
He's a great character. Can we just all agree, no matter how you feel about him, he's just an amazing character, because any character that gets an emotional response like that from people means that they're
invested
in him. You're invested in who he is.
I just loved when he was talking with Odium and, you know, just talking about how he could almost break Kaladin. Like, he knew Kaladin so well that he knew how to, you know, get to him. I was like, that just kind of jerked at my heartstrings. I was like, ugh. Like, how can you use your relationship with someone that you cared about and thought was your friend against them? Like, oh my gosh, that just made me really think he was just the worst.
But we all think that he's the worst. Let's all agree. Like, Moash is the worst. But there was someone who commented from, I did a video on this a little bit ago, and they commented like in defense of Moash. And I will say this one, I think, is kind of legit. Like, we compare Moash to Dalinar a lot. Like, Dalinar wouldn't give Odium his pain. But really, Dalinar did the same thing Moash did. He went to cultivation, and he was just lucky that it was cultivation and not Odium. And would have Dalinar given up his pain at Moash's age? My answer is yes. And so seeing Moash through that lens is like, well, Moash is still very young, and he gave up his pain, maybe not really knowing the consequences of what that was. And now it's too late. So I'm interested to see Moash's role under Taravangian as Odium and how that changes. And anyway, just kind of food for thought on him.
So you bring up an interesting point that we compare him to Dalinar a lot. And I think it's interesting because we compare him to he's a mirror for Dalinar, and he's also a mirror for Kaladin in Words of Radiance. Mm-hmm. So my question is, are we going to see him as a mirror for Shallan, who is our third main character? So if we're going to see him as a foil for Shallan in book 5, that would be very interesting.
He's a foil for nice. He is a foil. I agree with you. He's so often a foil for many different characters. He's just such a good character. Like, even though I hate him, he's just so good. I thought someone had a good question up here about where we rank it. I think that was Brayden.
Yeah.
Where do we rank Rhythm of War compared to the other 3 books? I think that's a really good question.
Ooh. Anyone want to start?
I think I would rate it number 1 right now. That's pending a reread, which I'm going to reread it sometime this month to make sure.
It's also recency bias. It's really hard not to have recency bias with a book like this.
For certain. So I think this one's 1. Rhythm, probably Words of Radiance next, and then Way of Kings, and then Oathbringer. Because Oathbringer is just like, I liked it for reasons, but I recognize its flaws a little bit more now.
Mine's close to you, Pete. Oh, sorry. You go, Megan.
Well, just from someone who's read all of them this year, so I don't know if you guys have read them sequentially, because I literally have read them back to back. So I would have to say I absolutely love this book because I loved just all of the connections and just the expansion of the world, like the Cosmere, not like the world of Roshar. And like we were talking about earlier, I like the fact that it took place just at Irithiru. For some reason, that was just a lot of fun for me. But I would say probably Words of Radiance, Rhythm of War, Way of Kings, Oathbringer, just for my personal preference, because I liked Words of Radiance because I like Shallan's journey, but I know a lot of people don't mesh with her, so that might not work for everybody.
I'm pretty close to you, Pete. I just switched. Words of Radiance will always be my favorite. I just think it's going to be really very difficult to unseat that for me. But then it goes Rhythm, Way of Kings, Oathbringer. So pretty close. I think we all pretty much feel the same.
Your mic was going out a little bit.
Oh, I just say I think we're all pretty similar in how we rate it, which I think is interesting.
How do you guys rate it in the chat? Let me see. So you've reread them back to back this year and think Words of Radiance is the worst. No. I think Words of Radiance like 5 gleaming stars. I loved it.
Yeah, I just think it has the best individual scenes. It's not necessarily as good pacing-wise as Rhythm at all, but the individual scenes in that book, there's just like the chasm, the duel, Adeline killing Sadeas at the end, swearing the ideal, Shallan's reveal. Like, there's just so many scenes that are just so great. Anyway, sorry.
I will say I agree kind of with the chat in regards to Oathbringer, because Oathbringer definitely had my favorite flashbacks because I love Dalinar, but I think the rest of the book didn't hold up to it, though the ending was phenomenal.
I think Dalinar's flashbacks are the most interesting because we learn the most. Dalinar is the one who's come on the biggest journey. He's the furthest now from where he was. Like, Shallan has always been a mess and is still a mess. So, you know what I mean? Like, it's the furthest. Kaladin has been depressed and is still depressed. So I feel like that's why his flashbacks are a little bit more interesting. I agree with that.
It's not possible to rate them. That's what I was like. Someone asked me today on Discord, what was our favorite book of 2020? And I was like, well, I can't say all of the Stormlight Archives, or I wouldn't.
Yes, you can. It's acceptable.
Other than all of the Stormlight Archives. And even Warbreaker, which I just like kind of lump in there. So yeah.
Oh, I like this. Brayden says, Oathbringer flashbacks were fire, pun intended.
Oh, I love those puns. Any puns about Evie's death? I don't know why. I just love them.
They're terrible, but so funny every time.
So dark. I love dark humor because of that. That's probably the reason why.
I love when Dalinar was remembering what happened to his wife. Like, that was just like, oh my God. That was just so much. So yeah, I agree with that so much. But the Oathbringer has the best ending. What do you guys think about that?
I think it has the most complete ending, because there are definitely people that I know that thought it was just going to be a trilogy.
Oh, really?
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I actually was talking to a friend. He thought this was going to be the last book, and I think he's still reading it. And I was like, no, this is going to be 10 books, man.
No.
He's like, oh, my entire viewpoint has changed now. I'm scared.
Yeah, I mean, 10am, 928, I think I understand that. Like, I think Oathbringer probably had the most emotional response in me at the end, just in terms of I really thought Dalinar was going to lose to Odium, and I was actually worried. I was worried, and then to flip it and say you can't have my pain is just like such a good moment.
Yeah.
So do you think book 5 is gonna kind of jump right into the deal that they made, or do you think there's gonna be maybe some time before that?
I think he's going to put at least the first 4 parts of the book into 10 days.
I could totally see that.
Yeah. He could definitely because he wants to make this a complete part of the series so people don't have a slog. I think book 5, like the last book of book 5, like the last part, is going to be consequences, essentially. Because that's kind of
like a Wheel of Time book where you've read 1,000 pages and 2 days have passed.
Haven't read Wheel of Time yet, but
you've read it, Megan, right?
I'm on book 7.
Okay, so you're knee deep in knowing that 1,000 pages is 2 days.
I mean, I've heard that I'm like starting to enter the slog part of the series, and I'm like, how? Each book is like this thick. Like, what can he possibly talk? Like, how can it go any slower? So that's what everyone tells me. Like, oh, you're entering the slow part for like the next 6 books.
Oh, Jason Allen has a good point. He said 10 days only starts the contest. So that is a good point. Maybe part 1 will just be the 10 days. We don't know how long that contest will last. That's a very good point.
Yeah,
especially if we have the child champion. I don't know if you guys have heard that theory.
No.
It's absolutely horrible, and I love it so much. So there's 3 outcomes to this thing. 3. We have Dalinar kills the champion kills Dalinar breaks. Or technically Odium breaks, but I don't think that's going to happen. Technically 4. So if Dalinar breaks, that's actually the thing that Odium wants. Odium wants Dalinar to break his oaths because that means Odium is free and can go anywhere. So the theory, I did not create this. This came from the 17th Shard.
Oh, this is going to be bad if you're giving it a caveat like that.
Gavinor as Odium's champion. Because Gavinor can't kill Dalinar. Dalinar can't kill Gav, and it's supported by Way of Kings epigraphs. Because he has said, like, I can't. I'd have to look them up.
You'd never be able to find it. I was like, don't, Pete, losing battle.
Okay, because it's in the death rattles. Because those are all.
Oh, the death rattles.
Yes. So there's 3 different death rattles that actually support this.
I'm gonna Google death rattles right now.
So the first one is: a man stood on a cliffside and watched his homeland fall into dust. The waters surged beneath, so far beneath, and he heard a child crying. They were his own tears. Where's the other one? Burns the 9. I hold the suckling child in my hands, a knife at his throat, and know that all who live wish me to let the blade slip, spill its blood upon the ground over my hands, and with it gain us further breath to draw. And then you kind of can use this one. The darkness becomes a palace. Let it rule, let it rule.
That's so much going into that. Oh my god.
Yeah, it's great.
I hate it. Thanks, Pete.
I hate it and I love it at the same time. It's.
And you know what though? Taravangian would do it.
Exactly.
Right? Totally.
Exactly.
So how do you guys think, kind of switching gears, that the fact that Bentley was a Knight Radiant, how do you think that's going to change the Parshendi, that like the whole culture of the Parshendi and their relationship to the humans and those that are serving odium? How do you think that's going to look in the next couple books?
What I would like it to look like is the Parshendi and humans working together against odium and the humans finding a way to apologize for what they've done and trying to come together. I feel like there's a decent amount of setup for that because in this book, we've come to like a lot of the Fused and the Regals, and I think it's not impossible that that's what's being set up.
I'm kind of curious what the Parshendi did to betray the Spren, because I guess there, was something that happened with them, and I'm just kind of curious because if they say that the humans betrayed the Spren, but then the Parshendi betrayed the Spren too, I'm just kind of wondering what the story behind that is.
So from what we know, there were 2 kind of things. I think the Parshendi betrayal was more gradual because when we first have what we know is that when the humans came to Earth, their god was odium, and the Parshendi had cultivation and honor as their gods.
Do we know that the humans did have odium as a god, or did odium intrude? Do we know that for sure?
I'm like 80% sure.
Okay, I'm asking only because I've been trying to find the answer to that, and no one's been able to answer to me if that's true or not.
There's some wording that talks, I can't remember where it is for the life of me, that talks about, the Voidbringers cometh and they bring their dark god or something like that. And we know that the original Voidbringers were the humans.
Right, but they bring a dark god. Was it their dark god? Like, that's what I'm always just curious with. Because if it is, then I think Surge Binding destroyed the planet because odium is who he is, and I don't necessarily think Honor Surge Binding will destroy Roshar. That's the only reason I ask.
Do we know where the humans came from? Have they?
Yeah, Ashen.
I couldn't remember.
Yeah, it's Ashen. It's like a planet in the Roshar system, right?
Yeah, one of the other 3. One of the other 2.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, continue, Pete. Sorry, I just wanted to know if we knew that.
Yeah, I honestly, that's actually a good point because I'm not sure that's great. But so eventually, the main point is that the cultivation and honor were the gods of the Parshendi, and thus they had the Spren. But as time goes on, more Parshendi joined odium, and more humans joined honor. Like as the Desolations went on, and at one point we did have a Parshendi human coalition during the Desolations. But eventually it switched so that the humans had honor and cultivation, and the Parshendi were the Voidbringers. And that's how we get
honor. Wasn't there something about like honor kind of also abandoning the listeners though? Like, didn't they say honor started favoring the humans for whatever reason?
Yeah, he did because they had stronger oaths, and he made them the heralds. So So it's interesting.
Plus, you have, once again, like the different, void light for odium and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
And that tone thing is something that pervades the whole Cosmere. So every shard will have a tone. And someone pointed out to me that I didn't even remember, like in Mistborn, you hear the sounds of ruin and preservation. Ruin is like the drums, and preservation, I forget what preservation sounds like. So we have heard other shards sound. So I'm very interested in the lights, like you said, Megan, and what that's going to be going forward.
And like I just love how it's like Rhythm of War, and then like you read the whole book and it's like Rhythm of War.
Yeah.
Like, that's awesome. Awesome that I get it now. But yeah, I love just the way that Navani figured out the sounds. It's it's not necessarily like a prism like splitting light. It's like actually sound waves. Like I thought that was awesome. Once again, like the sci-fi fantasy kind of thing. But I really think it's cool that some of the Parshendi might oppose odium, and also we have the Unmade. Sajana, is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Roughly.
Kind of.
Let's be honest.
We don't know.
Names. I'm like trying to remember. Is trying to kind of stand up against odium. So I'm kind of interested to see how that story is going to play out. I don't know if you guys have any comments on that.
I just appreciate that we're getting, not black and white. I always just really like not everyone on one side is just like this mindless evil. There's a spectrum, and that's just something I always really like in novels.
Well, it just makes it so much more interesting instead of just having like someone evil for evil or good for good. Like that's so boring.
Yeah,
so I completely agree with you.
I definitely think we have like absolute good and absolute evil represented, but having all the people in between really showcases like, hi, normal people struggle with this.
I mean, it's so realistic, right? Like even people who follow leaders that are evil or not evil, there's just always a spectrum. And so it's just such an interesting exploration.
A couple of people are saying they're missing Lopin. Yeah, I don't think Lopin was really in this one.
Well, you got a whole novella with Lopin, so go read Dawn Shard.
I kind of miss him too. Speaking of people that weren't in there, I know Brandon mentioned this on the live stream, but he mentioned that a lot of people were asking about Zahel and like, hey, where was he during the whole, Die Hard Kaladin thing? And he never actually wrote Zahel's part, but Zahel actually was doing something, evidently.
I know, and he was like, maybe I'll release it. And I'm like, please do, because Warbreaker is my favorite, and I would love to see more Vasher.
Yeah.
Just doing something? Or we don't know.
What about if Azure found him? What if Avena found Vasher? That's what I just swear must have happened.
They got to be together because she was looking for him. So, but she was looking for Nightblood, right?
She was looking for both, I think. Because Vasher says something about like, Vivenna's looking for me because she doesn't like what I am, aka a cognitive shadow. And so
that's right. Vivenna isn't a cognitive shadow.
She's not that we know.
Yes.
Do
we know how much time has passed?
My missing Warbreaker sequel that will never happen. Sanderson told me himself in person. It will happen. It's just gonna be years.
He's gotten it. Like I think he's in State of the Sanderson. He mentioned like there's been no movement on Warbreaker 2, but after Stormlight 5, he's going to reevaluate some of his plans, essentially.
That's good, because when I asked him at a signing, he was like, yeah, that's like one of the last books of the Cosmere. I was like, cool.
But I feel like if you're developing these characters and they have such an important part in these stories, like it needs to have some sort of context. Like you need to understand why they're doing what they're doing and the stakes and all of that. So you would have to write something. I feel like, I don't know.
I think we'll get it eventually.
We'll get it. Yeah, we're going to get it.
Warbreaker could be expanded on so much more. So
I think, I was just going to go back to your point, Pete. What did you say? Oh, how many years? That's always a question for me. Does anyone in our comments know how many years between Warbreaker and Stormlight? Someone mentioned on one of my common things that it has to at least be 20 years because Vasher trained Adolin. Or Adolin.
True.
Sorry. So we know it's at least he's been on Roshar for at least 20 years.
So I think we could probably say 25, considering he had to like do all his stuff, join the Ardentia.
25 to 30 probably.
Yeah.
But that's not that long in his lifetime. So I do wonder if it's like hundreds of years since we've seen him in Warbreaker.
So Vivenna has to be invested in some way or form.
Well, yeah, because Vivenna doesn't look old. Do we remember? What does Vivenna look like? How does Kaladin describe her in Oathbringer? How old is she? She's described as in her 30s?
Yeah, she's older than him, but she's not like super old. I think he said 30 something.
And in Warbreaker, she's like, what, 19?
Yeah.
She's younger,
so
yeah.
She aged a little bit.
So she's aged, but either she's found something to stop herself from aging, lots of breaths maybe?
Yeah, I don't remember if that actually stops you aging or not.
There is a heightening. I just looked up the heightenings, but it's a large heightening, and I don't know how she would have gotten there. I think it's not till the 5th heightening. Anyone know in the comments?
I need to go back and reread Warbreaker. Actually,
Brayden thinks it's 200-ish. Oh no, 200-ish years.
There's a full timeline somewhere online because I have seen it. I just haven't studied it enough to like be able to answer your question. But
card timeline.
It's like not like you can just look at it and be like, oh, that makes sense. Like you actually have to like study it. So, but talking about like Vasher and Vivenna and all of that, let's talk about Wit or Hoyd. So, what are you guys' thoughts on him in this book? I feel like he had a much bigger role than in past books. He's one of my favorite characters.
Same. I think I'm more interested in seeing how his role changes. Because, like, we know that he had a personal grudge against race. Because something happened on Yolen. We'll find out about it in when he actually writes an official Dragonsteel book.
In 30 years.
Yeah, in 30 years, when I've had kids and they've already gone off to college.
Someone's gonna have to he's gonna have to do for Brandon Sanderson what Sanderson for Robert Jordan. Someone's gonna have to finish these things.
Shh, don't put that out into the world because I'm also worried about that.
Keep good notes, Brandon.
Yeah, he's actually talked about that with the book's not right next to me, but Brian McClellan, who wrote A Promise of Blood, was actually his student. And I just read that, and I see a lot of Sanderson's influence on him. So I could see that. I think he needs a little bit more training because he's not up to Sanderson's level. But I think he could possibly be a person to do it.
I mean, if you have the notes guiding you on how the plot needs to play out, I feel like he could do it.
I just found something that estimates about 130 years between Warbreaker and Way of Kings.
So she found a lot of breaths somehow.
Found a lot of breaths. We know she awakens, right? Because we see her drain her cloak several times in Oathbringer.
Yes, I think so.
Because she always has that blue. Because I remember Kaladin, I reread Oathbringer right before, and Kaladin specifically mentions oh, he thought her cloak was blue and now it's not.
Yep.
So sorry, go back to Wit. I'm sorry.
Brayden, why are you jealous of Wit personally? I'm curious.
Because he's got all the powers. He's just a collector.
Well, I am.
I want Jasna. Me too, Brayden. Me too, but I just more want to hear.
Oh, gosh.
When they're in the conference room and they're talking about Wit, and there might be a thing going on, and I'm like, forget the battle. What's going on with them? I did not see that, especially with her. It's funny.
Yeah. How did you guys feel about the Jasna Wit relationship while we're on it?
I mean, I feel kind of from her perspective, Wit wants the kind of physical connection, but she's just kind of she doesn't need it as much as him, but it's just convenient. She's just too much of a logical scholar to ever go anything beyond that. But he's also I don't even know what he is. I don't think he's one to be in a stable relationship with.
He's Jack Harkness of.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a Doctor Who reference. Sorry.
I got it.
Okay.
I was really hoping she'd be aromantic. So.
Well, she's Ace.
She's Ace. Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that she's only with him kind of on an intellectual level. but which made me happy because that was something I really wanted for her personally. But I was hoping more aromantic. I just hope I never got to see in a relationship. That is just, I just like it when I get to see female characters that are like that. But I do understand, like, of anybody, Wit is probably the most worthy of our Queen Jasna.
Yes, for
My
certain.
favorite character of the Stormlight Archive.
What did you say? Like, he stimulates me, like, mentally? Didn't you
Yeah.
say something like that? Like, when one of her...
She sees him as a puzzle.
Yeah. But, like, that ending with him, I don't know what to think about that. All the way at the end, when he meets Taravangian as Odium and doesn't know that it's Taravangian.
I think that was a good scene because it showed he was fallible, and that's why it was so great. Because, like, we can't have just, Wit as basically a god in the entire thing that's over all the other gods. Mm-hmm. So it's I think him as a bigger role, to have a bigger role in the Stormlight Archive, he needed to be fallible. So that was, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It was such a good scene because I think we had been lazy as readers with Hoid. Like, Hoid just seemed this unstoppable force, and our only worry about him was what were his motivations. And now all of a sudden, he's not unstoppable. And I'm kind of interested in a Hoid, Taravangian, and Kelsier showdown. I think those three might be very well matched.
Yes, it'll be interesting.
Mm-hmm. I don't, maybe you guys know, but so does Hoid, does he have basically the magic of every single world?
Priam pointed out that it's every world except Elantris.
Okay.
Because he couldn't figure out how to become an Elantrian, essentially.
Because I know he's got breaths. I know he's a light weaver. So I'm like, dang. So,
he is an Elemancer as well. I think he's a full Mistborn.
Is he?
Yeah, because he took the bead. So we know that he's a full Mistborn, because that's what made Elend Mistborn. Someone said that Brandon stated last night he didn't take memories. Well, yeah, he deleted them. So Taravangian doesn't have memories. Is that what you're saying, Jason? Like, he just deleted them? Because I think that's what he said last night on the live. Like, he obliterated them.
Versus taking them for himself and being like, oh, this is interesting. Let's look through this Rolodex.
It's just like they're now missing from Hoid versus something else. Okay, yeah.
He did take the Moon Scepter. Do we know what the Moon Scepter does from Emperor's Soul?
He is a full Mistborn. I'm sorry, I'm just reading comments.
Like, Bookborn, do you remember, like, Emperor's Soul, if they said what the Moon Scepter can do?
No, I was hoping someone else would. I don't remember. I actually don't know if I knew Hoid had that. I don't know if I remembered that, which is funny because I love Emperor's Soul so much.
Yeah, he was... I think it was a very subtle reference, but eventually it turned out to be him. But yeah, I had forgotten about that as well.
Well, Google can solve all these things.
I'm not actually sure if he made a physical appearance. If I remember correctly, did he not even make a physical appearance? Like, I think the Moon Scepter was taken before the main character got there. And it was replaced with... I don't know. It's been a while. So I need to reread Emperor's Soul.
It says... I do too. Yet it is a translation device between... Oh, it can access investiture in various Celish magic systems. So if it can access it, then I guess he does sort of have a way to access Celish magic system.
I just feel like he's such an interesting character. You know, the fact that he is world hop so much and is able to access all of these different magic systems. I don't know. I think he's like one of the most fascinating characters.
And he doesn't have perfect pitch anymore. How is he going to tell his lovely story?
Okay, so here it is.
That's an excellent question.
The Moon Scepter can convert other types of messengers.
So is that...
That's wild.
Well, can it though? Because Sanderson said Hoy didn't know how to do that.
I think it translates... So from what the Coppermind says, it just translates the symbols for cell.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think it's just on the Celish system.
Oh, there's an alternate prologue. Gosh, things... I don't even know if I knew there was an alternate prologue.
But is it canon?
I would assume so.
Okay, this is something we're gonna have to research and like come back together.
It just you dig a little bit, and then it's just like so much more every time.
Yeah, that's the best thing about Sanderson is there's always more.
There's always another secret, you might say.
Okay.
Sorry, that's a Kelsier reference from Secret History.
That's Brandon trolling us again, as always.
Always.
All right. Did you guys want to? That was basically all of my notes. I don't know if you guys had anything you wanted to discuss or talk about. It can be Cosmere related or Rhythm of War related. Anything that I didn't touch on, because I'm a horrible note taker. And that was just some ideas that I had jotted down when I was reading.
Great.
I think that's everything.
Yeah, those are great talking points. I feel like we covered a lot of the big stuff.
I know. We've been on for like an hour and a half.
Not surprised.
Guys, in the comments, anything you want to add? Any predictions? Any talking points? Anything that you hated?
Yes, Amanda, I do know what assuming does.
That's my sister. Hi, Amanda.
Is it?
Yeah, I knew she was going to join.
Oh, speaking of the dog and the dragon, something that Sanderson said in State of the Sanderson is he wants to make picture books for all of these story within his stories, like Dog and the Dragon. Like he's still trying to figure it out, but I think that would be so awesome, and I could brainwash my children early
to get used to Sanderson.
Yeah.
Sorry, my kids are trying to come in. That would be awesome. I would love Brandon Sanderson children's books. Neil Gaiman has written children's books, and I have them, and they're great.
Yeah.
Well, okay, you guys. Well, if there's nothing else to talk about.
I think Braden has an interesting question. What do you guys think of L?
Are we supposed to know? Oh, goodness.
So I think he's just stated as, nope, wrong way. I don't think I had this one specifically. I mean, he's the one who wrote the Book 5 epigraphs, I think it is. I keep confusing epitaph and epigraph constantly. Eshonai, Dirty Tricks. No, I'm not going to find it here. Basically, he has a bunch of metal in his back, and the theory is that he's a hemallurgist.
Yeah, that's the theory that's been going around. But other people think it's just aluminum to block.
I think it's just aluminum, because I think the pursuer would have noted, like, oh, he has to kill a bunch of people with metal first on every time. And that would probably mean that he's killing other fused, because that's his only access to other investitures, essentially.
I really found the kind of similarities that are starting to emerge between the magic systems kind of interesting. I don't know, you said aluminum, and it kind of like triggered that thought. So I'm wondering if there's going to be some sort of like constant within these magic systems once we kind of get further into the whole of these different worlds and when it all comes together. I don't know. I feel like there might be something. I don't know if any of you guys have thought that.
We got a little bit of that with the book 1, the part 1 epitaphs 2. So like metal is going to be a constant throughout the like having an effect throughout the.
Because we have the Fabrials, and then we have obviously the Allomancy. So I was like, there's got to be something, just like a common denominator amongst all of them. So I just wanted to see if anyone had any thoughts about that.
I agree. Nothing to add. I agree with you, Megan.
Okay.
Investiture. I mean, investiture is the new Bitcoin, essentially. That's what the Ghost Bloods are going for.
Mm-hmm.
Invest now, huh? Invest in the future.
That's a good one.
Oh, wow.
Maybe.
I I think he would give Sazed a chance before he just killed him, but I agree with whoever said that he would be down to killing most shards. Because Kelsier doesn't like nobility. I agree.
Did you notice aluminum blocks fabrials? That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Aluminum blocks everything. It's just never good.
Exactly.
For anything.
And aluminum drains allomancy. Yeah.
When, if ever, do you think we'll see Sazed in the 10-book Stormlight arc? I mean, technically, we saw him in this one. I don't know if you meant like a bigger role. I would say probably back half, or book 5, because I think book 4 of Wax and Wane is going to be incredibly important to the Cosmere. I just have this huge feeling that it's just going to be insane, just like Rhythm of War.
Autonomy. We're going to get a
date for that yet?
It's this year.
Okay, so I can get caught up before book 4. Okay, good.
Book 4 is not going to be this year. It's going to be Skyward 3 is this year. Or 2021 is Skyward 3. And I think 2022 he's going for.
Oh, I remember reading that on Reddit. Man, he's been pushing that book for a while. But he said he wanted a Cosmere break, right?
Yeah, he wants his Cosmere break. He's got a bunch of little projects. Like, honestly, go read this. Everybody go read this. It's an overload.
So are the lights of Roshar the same as the mists from Mistborn?
Ish. I don't think... So you have to understand a little bit how each works. Mistborn, the metals aren't investiture. The metals are a conduit for investiture to work. So when they burn the metal, that's like a tiny little gate to the spiritual realm that pulls investiture through it. And then in Roshar, it's like you're consuming metal. Or not consuming metal, you're consuming investiture as you use it. Like your body is like a vessel for the investiture a little bit more than you are as a Mistborn. So, sort of. I don't exactly remember how the mists work. I think the mists work similar to the I don't think they're pure investiture. I think the mists are also a conduit, but I could be wrong.
I'm excited to get back into the Mistborn world. I feel like it'll kind of, after reading Stormlight Archives, it'll kind of like just solidify some stuff for me. That is not what I meant to click. So Jason said Skyward 3, then Wax and Wane 4, then Skyward 4. Okay. I'm fine with that. Goodbye, Chaz.
See ya. Thanks for coming. She does. And I think it's been clarified before, but I need to reread Mistborn and go do a little bit more research. Because honestly, there's some Warbreaker and Elantris like mechanics and Mistborn mechanics that are kind of flying by me right now that I need to refresh.
Yeah, I need to refresh myself on Elantris particularly. Like now that all of a sudden Sanderson keeps bringing up Elantris as being really important again, I just feel like that's the system I remember least about.
I think I know what he's talking about when he's talking about it says it's similar, because with how Elantris
how they died, like when the earthquake happened and then everything just like went gray and lifeless.
Yes.
But my question is why? Why is the geography changing similar to the Unmade being trapped? Like there's a why here that I feel like we don't know yet.
It's about the change in connection with a capital C.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because Boado was connected to everything. And also Boado is a wonderful name that we should make lots of puns out of, by the way. So, because it has to do like with, I'm probably going to be spoiling some of the Elantris, but like it has to do, I'm going to try to be tiptoeing.
Oh, I just spoiled Elantris. I'm so sorry.
No, it's really okay. Do not worry about it. Like
it's just how it changed.
I'm on chapter like 7. It's okay. I mean, I've already like read his other stuff, which makes mention, it's fine.
Okay, I'm sorry. Just forget what I said.
Forget everything.
Forget everything I just said. I'm sorry.
I accidentally spoiled the end of Mistborn for someone yesterday, and I feel terrible still.
That's worse. The end of Mistborn is so much more surprising.
Yeah, we were talking about Sazed, and I was like, "Do you know spoiler tag XYZ?" And she was like, "Oh no, I haven't read that book yet." But I was like, "Why did you click on the spoiler tag? I feel so bad."
That's not your fault.
Priam, yeah, it has to do with the connection between all that stuff. Like, Elantris is also unique because of where the investiture is. Because the investiture isn't in the spiritual realm for Elantris, it's still in the cognitive realm, which is weird. So, because the actual connection between the invested people, the Elantrians, and the actual where the investiture is changed, that's what caused them to go all blah. And because the connection changed significantly for Boado, because Boado was ripped out of there, that change, and because Boado was connected to Roshar, she wasn't connected to Odium anymore. So if she was connected to Roshar, the system, versus being connected to Odium, she took something away from the world, essentially. That's a working theory.
Okay, that's what you were looking at. I'm sorry, I'm a horrible moderator.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it must be, right? But again, why? I like the idea, though, of the cognitive versus the spiritual. I think that's clearly an important part that you described, Pete.
I just want to know, sorry, I just want to know how a Seon is in Roshar, on Roshar.
I was asking the same question, and Brandon talked about it last night and said, well, he said, read and find out. Duh.
Yeah, he did.
Yavor says. But shoot, I don't have my notebook next to me. What did he say, Pete? He said something like,
it's because they're different. And I'll talk to my personal theory. Seons are little balls of investiture. They're self-sustaining. That's why they don't have to be next to Elantris with its very, high world connected, like landscape connected and symbol connected.
How is that being a little bit of investiture different than a Spren? Isn't Spren merely like a little bit of investiture and they can't leave Roshar?
It's a different relationship. So Spren, I think, are directly tied to the land through the spiritual realm in a weird way, but Seons are different because, remember, there's a lack of connection between the spiritual and the cognitive realm on Elantris.
Right.
So because it's kind of like, instead of reaching through a barrier to get the investiture, you're kind of scooping it out of a lake.
Yeah, that makes sense. I have to say that who said it? Shoot. Oh, Tanyam928 has my personal favorite theory, only because I love Emperor's Soul so much that there might be a soul stamp to make the Seon think it's still on Cell.
That's actually a really good theory, especially since Ghostblood or Mraze was like, hey, don't open the box or everything's going to go die.
Yeah, and so people have been theorizing that it's a soul stamp, and I just really want that to be.
Urigat makes a good point because Seons aren't created by emotions. Seons are created by, like...
It's more independent. Oh, yeah, we got 3 stars.
Gosh, we did. Yeah.
Whimsy, Valor...
Whimsy, Valor, Invention, and Mercy.
And Mercy. Let's be honest, we're all interested in Whimsy. I want to see Whimsy's world.
State of the Sanderson. Go ahead.
16 or 14 to the 16 named now?
We have 14, yes.
14, yeah.
So Brandon's going to write a YA Cosmere book with magic kites.
So it's obviously Whimsy. Is that what everyone's saying? Obviously, if there's magic.
Obviously Whimsy.
Oh man, I should have finished the whole State of Sanderson before I came on tonight.
That's literally the first. I realized it was out, and I was like, oh, I got to go read this before tonight.
Have you noticed that like the original vessels for most of these shards were women?
I didn't notice that. Women are dragons in the case of cultivation.
A woman dragon. Shrek. Oh, you a lady dragon. Somebody knows that reference.
Maybe we're the same.
Oh, thank you for that. Somebody needs to put that on Creme posting.
Oh, me. I'm a part of Creme posting. I've never made a post. Maybe that will be my first one.
Oh, I like that. That's on which of these new shards are connected to Aethers.
The Aethers. I don't know. I haven't heard that much about Aethers of the Night, though. That's the thing. I know he's read some of like a draft of Aethers of the Night. I haven't actually heard it though.
8 women, 8 men. Okay.
So even.
So. And Mercy was there when Ambition was splintered. Because Odium splintered Ambition so when you get to Threnody, which is a really dark one in the Arcanum Unbounded.
Yeah, but Threnody that's like my second favorite novella by him.
Yeah, I really can't wait till we get the Threnody novel. I love
it. I'm right there. Anyway. Yeah.
So many good things.
I'm sorry, Megan.
What?
Gotta hurry. I'm just kidding. You got so much good stuff ahead of you. Have you read Emperor's Soul yet?
Nope.
Okay. That's where soul stamping is from, and that's not a spoiler. Like, that's just part of the magic on that. So.
Yeah,
I'll have to go on to 17.
I feel like it's gonna bleed into 2021. So that was like one of my goals, to try and get caught up on everything. So I feel like I did a good job.
You did an amazing job. Like, oh my goodness.
So, yeah, but like I said, I am good on my notes. I don't know if there's anything else you guys want to specifically talk about.
I'm good. Unless anybody else has something.
Amazing conversation. I'm like even more excited now. Talking to you guys just makes me so excited about all the possibilities.
We should like just meet and have like theory conversations.
That's literally why I joined book 2, because I was like, oh my gosh, so many people I can get on and actually talk to people about theories. This is great.
It's so cool that his world is so extensive that you need a community to even begin to unravel it all, which I think is just so fun, because it goes so much beyond just discussing his novels. It's trying to solve them, which is just like such a fun way to engage with people.
Well, when I first read Mistborn, like I had no idea that it was part of this larger universe. Like I had no idea that everything was interconnected. So that was a lot of fun finding out, because I mean it was.
Yeah.
But I'm starting the Malazan series in 2021 too, and that is like the same exact thing. That's like
it's a different flavor, but it's so good still. Like it's still like the interconnectedness, you still feel it. Because the timeline of the books is really wonky, so it does kind of feel like you're reading. It feels a little, if you have the same, like I have a specific mindset that I use for Sanderson books, like a specific analytical, like, okay, I'm looking for details while enjoying the story. And I use that same mindset with Malazan, because there's so many little details, and that's why it's so good on a reread as well.
That's a lot of heavy books for you in 2021. So
yes,
that's a lot of work. Mm-hmm.
And believe it or not, Pete, I've tried reading Gardens of the Moon before and stopped like halfway through, tried it again and stopped halfway through. So I've never been able to like get past that second part of the book. And this was like years and years ago. And I'm like, I think I just need people to discuss it with, because I felt like, I know I'm getting like way off topic, but Erickson was just like, oh, here, I'm going to put you right in the middle of this plot with no explanation. There you go.
People who say Sanderson is confusing, when I read Gardens of the Moon, I was like, what is happening for like 90% of the book? And I feel like I'm pretty quick on the uptake. I stopped after Gardens of the Moon. So I feel like I need to give it another try. I feel like you, Megan, like I read it, I think it was 6.5 years ago now. And I'm like, I feel like maybe I'm in a better place.
Yeah.
To understand Erickson now.
I was like, young.
I just finished book 4, House of Chains. I honestly don't feel like I had a huge clue. I didn't really know what was going on until book 3. Like book 2 isn't as heavy as Gardens of the Moon, but there's still a lot you're kind of trying to figure out on the fly.
But like,
the Memories of Ice.
To keep going, if you have no idea what's happening in the first book, like that takes a lot of commitment.
Yeah, Walker Wright says that he just read the first, and that was me. I read through the first and then stopped. And I did see a meme that was like, if you think any book's confusing, try Garden of the Moon, which made me feel better. I was like, okay, it's not just me that's just like baffled.
That's just what I've heard. So I just feel better. Everyone says it gets better because he wrote book 2.
10 years later. I didn't know that.
Dang.
I love fantasy trivia. Thank you.
Maybe he had to like go back and fix all the mistakes he made in the first one.
Change his writing style.
That's funny. The poor people who read only one series and have no idea what an epigraph.
Who is this Sazed everybody's talking about?
I mean, doesn't it say Sazed in the? It's like, who is this Harmony?
Yeah, that's right. They didn't say Sazed.
Who was?
Did they even say Harmony?
What's this sand that's randomly on here? Man, there's all sorts of stuff in Rhythm of War that's like sand, magic sand.
Magic sand?
Hair. Why do we care about some clipping of hair? I care about clippings of hair.
You haven't read Second Era Mistborn yet?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh no, I've read every Cosmere multiple times, except that one. Actually, I'm not a huge fan of the Second Era, so no.
I'm a huge Garrus fan because she likes numbers.
Yeah, I'm a huge Steris fan. Steris speaks to me on a personal level. Like her love of paperwork is just so personal to me. Like, yes, paperwork makes sense. It's organized. I'm into it. But I'm just not into like gunslinging.
Is it like a flintlock? More like a flintlock fantasy?
Yeah. Western steampunk. Is that what you just said, Megan?
I said flintlock. Like
flintlock. I don't know what that is.
That's like Revolutionary War, French Revolution.
With guns.
I wouldn't be interested in flintlock either, so maybe that's why I don't know what it is. But yeah, it's like very steampunky and just like isn't my personal favorite. It has characters a lot like Lift, like
silly.
The silly, and it's just not my personal thing. But
Ramsey said he liked Era 2. Yay.
It's a nice breath of fresh air.
People, I will say, it's a pretty unpopular opinion. I think there's a lot of people who prefer Era 2 to Era 1. Like, I've heard that a lot. So I think it's just a preference thing. Yeah, people love it.
I'll have to let you know how I like it and Elantris as soon as I finish. So
yeah, let me know.
I will. And I hear Wax and Wayne are like a great character duo.
Yes, they are a good duo.
Yeah.
Wayne connects with me on the level of hats. I like hats.
Debatable if they're really that great of a duo, but
Wild West. Ugh, I'm not a huge Western person, but maybe if it's got like magic in it, we'll see.
The fight scenes are actually real. I think they're really well written. Like some of the fight scenes are crazy because you get the combinations of Farukami and Allomancy that you get some really cool combinations there that make for some interesting fight scenes.
Okay. You guys are making me excited.
Good.
It's always good Cosmere wise. Like I always say, like the Brandon Sanderson books I don't like are still much better than most of the books I read. And that I just love Sanderson. So that's kind of my opinion on that. So even when I say like I don't really like Era 2, it's just in comparison to
the rest of the Cosmere.
His other stuff, but not necessarily comparison to other novels that I've read, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think guns combine with Allomancy so well.
Yes.
And they do. I mean, for sure. For sure.
The fight scenes are the best. I wouldn't say Wild West because we're in a very large, early New York style city.
Accurate.
That's kind of Wild West feeling. It's like two different sides of the same coin, right? You've got like the Wild West, but you've also got like that time period, you know.
Edge of the industrial age.
Yes, yes.
Era 2 is great as it adds interesting limitations. Vin was actually super overpowered.
I can agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
What? It's the worst? I don't know, because I had several people tell me that Elantris was like a snooze fest.
I was actually surprised at that. I see where they're coming from, but I was still surprised because I did like the two main characters that people don't like in the Elantris. I really liked their interactions throughout the book and the kind of chasing each other's tails that they do.
Yeah, I think Elantris just has his most tropey characters. I think they're just the most very typical run-of-the-mill fantasy, but I think Elantris's end is very underrated. Elantris' end was a great Sanderlanche, even for his first novel, and I think it's very underrated. So you got something good coming to you, Megan. I would agree with that, Jason.
Yeah, same.
He said book 1 is Wild West, book 2 is Sherlock Holmes, book 3 is Indiana Jones. Wow.
I agree with that.
So the question is what book 4 is going to be.
Same writer.
Getting ready for our 80s punk.
Oh my gosh, 80s punk Cosmere would be so funny.
Isn't that's era 3?
Oh, you're right.
Is 80s punk, and then era 4 is space opera.
I'm so excited for era 3 now because punk.
Just punk. Just 80s. Just so excited for the 80s. So
I'm having
and Priam 468 is right. Elantris is the weakest in terms of writing, but the story is just as excellent in my opinion. Like the story is Sanderson worthy, but the writing just wasn't quite there yet.
But I mean, if I've already read his current stuff, I already know that. So going into it, you know.
Mm-hmm. You were prepared for it. So I think it's fine if you're prepared.
Sequels should always be better.
Mm-hmm.
You want to forgot that? Disney Star Wars, but that's all I'm going to say on that.
Oh, me and you, Pete, we got to talk sometime off this chat about that. I got lots to say.
Oh, gosh.
We got to stay at least Sanderson related.
All right, guys. I'm talking so much. Spoilery chat for Rhythm of War. Thank you guys so much for joining in the comments and talking. Feel free to add anything you want right now. Any extra thoughts? All right. I'd love to join a Star Wars chat.
Yeah. Okay, we got just Discord. We got to get a Discord on that because,
definitely.
Yeah, Priam, you're right. Yeah, the White Sand novel is the same thing.
That's the graphic novel, right?
Yeah,
it is. You can get the novel version. I actually haven't finished the graphic novel version because I could not stand the graphic novel. But you can read like his unedited prose of it. So I think it's more harm that it's just so unedited. Okay. But it was still a good read. That's like when you're knee deep. Don't worry about that yet.
That's just extra.
You're like, I have nothing else to do, so I'm gonna read this unpublished novel.
I think he's gonna try to put out a compendium for that one too, which is gonna be interesting.
Cool.
I think
that's and has Chris, who's a super cool Cosmere character. So you at least do probably want to read the graphic novels for Chris. Yeah. Anyway,
you're writing this stuff down.
Sorry. Well, this was fun.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, you guys. Well, I guess I'm going to go ahead and close out the stream. Once again, I appreciate you coming to chat with me, and thank you everybody for watching. I guess be on the lookout maybe in the future for some more chattery. That is not a word. Chats with us, and yeah, I will see you guys later. Have a great night.
Bye. Happy holidays. Bye.